Welcome everyone. My name is Milad Geisman, and I'm here as the chair of History of Art here at Yale University. And I'm thrilled to be welcoming you here to this talk by Royce Young Wolf. We have audience here in the room, and we have audience online. So this is absolutely extraordinary, and I hope everyone will have a good hybrid experience. We will begin with land acknowledgement. Yale University acknowledges that Indigenous peoples and nations, including Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Shattuck, Golden Hill, Patuxet, Niantic, and Quinnipiac, and other Algonquian-speaking peoples, have stewarded through generations the lands and waterways of what is now the state of Connecticut. We honor and respect the enduring relationship that exists between these peoples and nations and this land. This very special event is co-sponsored by the Department of the History of Art, the Yale Group for the Study of Native America, and the Yale University Art Gallery's Martin A. Ryerson Lectureship Fund. Additionally, our speaker's time here with us is funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation and Yale's Faculty of Arts and Sciences. I would like now to invite Mark Mitchell, Holcomb T. Green Curator of American Paintings and Sculpture at the Yale Art Gallery, to introduce our speaker. Mark, please.
Thank you, Millette. It's a pleasure to help introduce Royce Young Wolf. Royce joins us this fall as the Andrew W. Mellon Postdoctoral Associate in Native American Art and Curation, a dual appointment in the History of Art Department and the Yale University Art Gallery. She is also a Presidential Visiting Fellow. Royce comes to Yale from the University of Oklahoma's doctoral program in Sociocultural and Linguistic Anthropology, where she's completing her dissertation on pursuing an understanding of Indigenous relationship making in language revitalization, conversations with Indigenous language activists, which is the research on which she'll draw in her remarks today. Her academic work builds on her decades of experience in education, cultural documentation and archival preservation, and language and culture study. For the past 2 years, Royce has served as collections manager at the new Mandan Hidatsa and Arikara MHA Nation Interpretive Center in her home community, overseeing every aspect of its interpretive development and curating its primary displays with the active partnership of tribal elders and knowledge keepers. We welcome Royce to Yale at a key moment, as the university expands its commitment to Indigenous studies and hires newly created positions in its academic and museum divisions dedicated to Native American studies. Her work, and that of those who are to come, builds on the foundation built by many dedicated people, some of whom are either here today or watching online. As we look ahead together, we share responsibility for bringing Indigenous voices, culture, and art to the forefront of our community, and we're grateful for the work of those who have come before us. After the presentation, Royce will answer questions as time permits. Our wonderful graduate student in the History of Art, Isabella Robbins, will come up to the podium to manage questions both from you here in the room and from our Zoom audience. If you're watching online, please feel free to put your questions into the Q&A during the program. Please join me now in warmly welcoming Royce Young Wolf.
I'd like to, as they say, shake the church a little bit to begin with, and gift you all with a song I wrote. It's not a lament, it's about life with the passing of my father. Mahobadish. Heyo, heyo. Heyo, heyo. Mazageras. Me gusta que te tutte hue tanta me pa tutte hue dama bia ay 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 Mazageras, Mahobadish, Heyo, 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 Mazageras, me gusta que te tutte hue me apa tutte hue bia eya I'm improvising my drum. I was dreaming about the past, and my heart was beating fast. I began to lose control. I began to lose control. I didn't mean to hurt you. And I'm sorry I made you cry. Oh, I didn't want to hurt you. I'm just a jealous guy. We are born into a universe of pre-existing relationships, veins outstretched, constricted. Heavy is our blood with the weight of ancestors. Flowing between intersecting family lines, breathing in and out. In this life, do not be afraid to dream beyond the inheritance of colonial lines, language loss and endangerment, our birth from broken relationships, tangled stories, constrict our hearts and tongues. Learning my ancestral languages is a ceremony of unlearning and remaking. It's a journey of looking back to guide me forward on the path before me. My languages were gifted from weathered hands through the sharing of hearts and tongues. Words and songs mend what was lost. Haratza hisosore, dame daiguap are eloquent. The words flow effortlessly from fluent speakers. I look closely at their lips and tongues, straining my damaged right eardrum. They blush and I learn a little bit more. Only by ceremony can I cast light onto the reasons why my tongues and ears are damaged. I didn't mean to hurt you. And I'm sorry I made you cry. The same words I imagined my father would have said to my mother had they not been born ancestral enemies, grew into lovers unraveling, captives of boarding school traumas. Learning my ancestral languages is a ceremony of looking back to remake the path before me. Learning ancestral languages is remaking relationships lost. Weya, weyo, weya, weyo, mazakeras, me gusta agetiwa. Fine. Zambe to meet Garashtawakish. Kuivu for coming here and spending this time with me. I want to acknowledge the ones that have left, the ones that have birthed me, and the ones that are still yet to come. I hope that I can live up to my name and lead a new generation forward that are untainted by the colonial lines. Today, I'll be discussing my own language loss, acquisition, and revitalization with you. This story weaves in and out of my own education and research. I've been doing my dissertation research, I think, for a record-breaking time. But it's also built on 2 other degrees. With that, I feel like I've lived 5 lifetimes. Within this work and within the journey of my own language loss, acquisition, and revitalization, there's story work, a process of decolonization, a process of reworking the knowledge that we have, a process of unlearning and remaking. Within that are life stages that Kim Anderson talks about, that from before birth, through our youth and upbringing, the milestones of our life, all the way to what has us recognized as an elder, not just someone who has grown old. Added to that is my current work of looking to the future. How do we empower language revitalization? Not necessarily the technical act, but the people who sustain it, the people who feed it. What is our consciousness and awareness of the communities we are building, the communities and relationships we envision, and the lives that we want for our future? All of this is part of language revitalization, but it's not necessarily part of language acquisition or the curriculums that are being developed within language programs today. Throughout my work, I've looked to repeating this as a mantra. What are we actually revitalizing, and for what future? How do we sustain ourselves to move towards the future we envision? What are the relationships that will achieve this? Are we asking those questions alongside morphology and syntax? Are we asking those questions along polysynthetic, synthetic words and sentences? Are we asking that when we leave our jobs, when we go home? Much of the work that I've done has been with other language activists. I decided to use this term language activist, even though there's not many who do use that. Instead, you'll hear terms like language champion, language warriors, word warriors. The language activists I'm talking about are long-term people who are invested in not just the documentation of learning their language, preserving it, but also teaching it. And they've crafted for themselves a lifetime of skills and knowledge. Within my dissertation work, I've had the wonderful privilege of meeting many Indigenous language activists from around the world. Today, I'm wearing items that were gifted to me from some of them, from Aotearoa, from North America, from Turtle Island. And so they're here with me, not just in their teachings, but in their gifts as well. I'd like to talk to you about gifting. Gifting is one of the most foundational teachings that we learn as Indigenous people. We gift stories, we gift life as parents, as mothers. we also gift different parts of ourselves and forms of knowledge throughout a person's lifetime. What colonization has taken is our knowledge of the intimate steps of gifting, the intimate processes of responsibility of taking care of those gifts. Many of our people are proceeding on a journey of relearning that within themselves. We have fluent speakers who don't know that process, even though they still have the language. You can't separate cultural teachings from the language teachings. They empower each other. One is not whole without the other. In the song that I sang, I said the word Mazagarats. That's a Hiradza word for gratitude. That means thank you in some translations. I'd like to tell you the story of Mazagarats the way I learned it, as an example of story work that happens. The multiple layers that are intertwined within words and forms of knowledge. Mazagarats to me is both a very sensitive story as well as a happy one. By the time I was 4, I was separated with my mother from my father's family. The fluent speaker, my great-grandmother, she no longer had access to me. Therefore, I no longer had a consistent speaker. Hiradza, as my first language, was already beginning to be lost. I'm told I would still dream and speak out loud in the language. Today, I still dream in the language, and I'm catching more and more bits of it as I learn the language more. After I gave birth to my first son, my oldest son, who's here in the audience today, with my youngest son, I journeyed home after 18 years, after more than 18 years of being away from my father and my grandmother on that side. On one of the last days we ended up being there, I was at my Magoo's house, my grandmother's house, and we were in there. I was at the table and I was cradling my son in the quilt she had made him. She's a world-class quilter. And so I was eager to learn more stories from her and to learn more teachings. But suddenly, she told me, shh, be quiet. Don't say anything. Within moments, my father burst through the door, bringing my son home for the first time, and being home after so many years gave him reason to celebrate. Within those moments, my grandmother was quiet, I was silent, and it was layering why language loss is not so much about access. It's about the relationships that we have with the environment, the social environment of the last speakers. After that, we chose to leave, and we were gone for a number of years. Before that, I asked my grandmother, how do I say my name in Hiradza? I knew the story, I knew the English translation. And she said, Mazagarats. Well, I held on to Mazagarats for those years that I was gone. At that time, language materials were not accessible. There was no big dictionary of Hiradza terms. There was hardly the internet at that time. So my access to the language was from who I had contact with. But the way we're taught to pray is when you pray to the Creator, you say your name. And so for a number of years, I would say, Dajadzi, Mazagarats. It makes me laugh now because I think about the Creator and ancestors like, it's that one, Mazagarats again. During that time, I learned Mazagarats isn't the translation of my name. It's thank you. And so I've made that part of that story work, going into what it means to learn our languages. What are the stories that go along with learning the language? Some things you can only learn by living them.
I will always know what Mazirats means, even if with my busted right eardrum and my weird southern northern accents, I can't quite get the syllables right. And maybe it's chalkboards or nails on a chalkboard still to some of the fluent speakers, and for that I apologize, especially if some of my family are listening online. But that's all part of the process. That's story work. That's learning it. That's keeping those lessons with us and being all right with them. It's all right to have that negative side. It's all right to remake those memories into something beautiful. But how do we channel that work into language revitalization, into language acquisition? So I set out on that. Is why did Magoo choose to tell me my name was Mazigaraats? She's not the only one who was damaged. My father was hurt. I was hurt. My children were hurt. This is intergenerational trauma, birth from contact, and then birth from the trauma that we impose upon each other within our communities. Language loss is about speaking. It's about truth-telling of these issues, and then intentionally reworking them and remaking them, learning new patterns. Fancy words for decolonizing the way that we are going through our own life stages. But that can't happen if we're not open to it. There's not many that I know within my own communities, and I'm from about 5 of them that I've worked with, that I have ancestral ties with. There's many of us that hurt is still too close. That hurt is still happening in our homes. It's still happening in our schools. It's still happening within the closest relationships that we have. My healing did not start until I was amongst other Indigenous people. Indigenous people that reassured me, it's all right. It's all right to talk about that. It's all right to also infuse that into your research, because what we are lacking as Indigenous people are making those tracks so that others can follow us. Margaret Newton, wonderful Anishinaabe Ojibwe woman, talks about that. She is making tracks that others can follow. She is looking back to those ancestral teachings so that she can move forward better. When I began my dissertation research, I, like many, were of the mind that there's got to be an easier way. There has to be an easier way, not just to do research, but to learn the language. And in Oklahoma, I had a wealth of a multiplicity of different communities, and some of them were very open to sharing the knowledge that they had. Jacob Manitoa Bailey, he created the Sauk language department. He opened my eyes to, because he had already been in the game for quite a few years. He opened my eyes to a Jedi paradox, is what he called it. Is we think that there's some magic method, that there's some force to learning a language that's going to make it easier. There's not. It's time, it's consistency, it's intentional work. It's looking at why language is lost in the first place, and then putting to work what we need to do. That goes outside of intensive language learning. Intensive language learning to become conversational comprehension can take up to 2 years, up to 2,000 hours. That's a lot of time. And people don't always have jobs to achieve that. So that increases the time when they can do that on their own. If you want to be conversationally fluent, that's up to 4,000 hours, intensive language learning. Again, not everyone can do that. And then minimal access within that, what type of materials do you have?
Is it an adult language learning program? Is it a school that you're also teaching in, the younger preschool students or elementary students? There's all of these factors in how language is being learned. Jacob shut me down. There is no easy way. There's not some magic method that's going to be out there because it's time. And so I went back to the drawing board with my own research, figuring out, okay, well, what sustains us? If we have enough language materials, will that sustain us? Okay, let me go and talk with people and figure out what needs to be done. How long, how much, what's the algorithm? How much language materials do you need to sustain this long? In 2014, I worked with Timothy Caratu, Hannah O'Regan, and various tribal organizations and nations in Oklahoma to organize a 5-day gathering with the people, part of the Te Panakiretango Te Reo in Aotearoa, and then with, I think, around 23 total nations from Oklahoma showed up. Of those were various different levels of language learners. They were teaching in the elementary school, they were doing dual programs, they were doing professional development. All of them had been involved in language work. I thought that when they came together, we would be talking about methods, trying to figure out what methods are best. Within the first hour, it wasn't methods, it was about relationships. How do we work together long term? How do we go to work and work together and still want to have a life together outside of work? How do we cultivate those type of relationships more than the 2-year program, more than the 4-year program, where we're actually building a community? Those were the conversations held over those course of the days. In almost every single language gathering that I've been to, while methods are discussed, the most meaningful moments fall back on how do we get along? How do we overcome that inheritance of colonialism? How do we overcome our differences? So in 2016, I finalized what I was going to do for my dissertation. There was no survey that was going to provide those answers. Instead, with wonderful funding and support from the Cobell Scholarship Program, I embarked on a North American trip to visit as many different language activists as I could. I also worked with many across the world and continued my conversation and cultivating my relationship with Timothy Caratu, with Hannah O'Regan, and many of the students over there. After all of that work, there's over 150 years combined knowledge between just 10 of the people that I decided to document our conversations with. Of all of that knowledge, they stretch back to the necessity of life stages. Our people, when we become adults, we are not whole. In the sense, we are missing pieces of foundational knowledge that had we not gone through colonization and ongoing lateral violence, ongoing dysfunction, we may be whole. So now when we're in language revitalization programs, we're not just looking at language loss, we're also looking at what are the roots of the language loss and how do we empower each other to not just learn the languages, but to make a fluent speaking community. Because that's language revitalization, that's the future. It's not just a speaker here or a speaker there. It's a whole community of like-minded individuals that have mutual respect and love and teach each other and share and carry the load, because one person can't do it. There can't just be one fluent speaker. And so Timothy Caratu, he reminded me, second language learners are the future. They are our most valuable assets. And we need to look at what do they need to sustain the work that they are doing. That's really complicated. I'm still trying to figure out the details of that. And I can't say that I'm fully successful because I myself am not aware of everything that's going on with someone. But I do know with intention, continued love, that we can figure that out. And that brings us back to gift making. After a few years, I went back to my grandmother who had been transferred to a nursing home. My summers were spent in that nursing home with her, learning more. I finally gained the courage to ask her, how do you say my name in Hadza? She sat there for a while. This was after a couple months of coming back continuously. Knowledge is a gift. Sometimes it's not freely shared. I listened to many stories, and even though she is my direct grandmother, I had to earn that trust again. Finally, I learned that Garish Tawakish isn't just a translation for dancer. The meaningful translation is the one who brings joy. But that's not just the translation right there. If you go into the actual detailed technical translation, it's a phrase that talks about the beginning, the moment before a dance. The meaningful interpretation of that word that was passed down from my great-grandmother, June Berries, one of the last people in our last Earth Lodges. I'm named after her daughter that survived their move, forced move back to the reservation. Her name is Garish Tawakish. It means the one who brings the joy that you feel as the dancers are about to dance. You can't learn that in a book. You can't learn that from a list of words. That is learned, and that knowledge and the meaningfulness is learned from relationship making. How we're able to maintain those relationships, though, rests on a huge number of factors. Can I economically afford to live within my community? Is the social environment going to sustain me and my family? Are the schools going to sustain it? What type of communities is going to be produced in the years that I commit my life to? These are all things that go into language work, because we can't keep speakers, second language speakers, if we can't sustain our basic needs. In a conversation with Timothy Caratu, he pointed out to me, while it's the second language speakers who are our assets, they are our future. It's not ones who are just struggling to survive. That is not going to sustain a new generation of language speakers. And with that, how do we continue our journey of language learning and language teaching while also not being able, or also not being afraid of providing food for our children, paying for our homes? While some communities are able and capable to provide wonderful resources for the people who are learning the languages, they're documenting, and they're doing all of that work on the ground, on the front lines. Some communities, they can't. Some communities, we're still learning what it means in our life to integrate our languages. So the work that I'm doing today, that I'm going back to, is looking to the future of how do I continue revitalizing and doing language acquisition and the work that I choose to do. For the last few years, I've been the collection manager of the MHA Nation Interpretive Center. Through that work, I was in a wonderful position to integrate my language work and my relationships that I had with my elders and other scholars within that community. Expanding the language work that I was doing because I had already spent a number of years doing language documentation, documenting words, looking at all the different ways that those words take place, occur, first person, second person, all of that. And it's tiring. You can see the elders kind of, it's getting old, but they keep going on because they love it. And so you make food and you make gifts and you cultivate that relationship you have with them. That's the responsibility as being mentored by them, as being a mentee. We're not always taught that. That's a life stage. How do we continue to feed them as they feed us? So I took this opportunity to expand the work that I was doing. I gathered together a lot of cultural material items that had been taken, went and reached out to a lot of different institutions for photos, for detailed information, as much of the provenance as they could possibly provide on each of those items. And when I brought them into the room with my elders, lights went off. Light bulbs were, it was magic. They were seeing items that they had not seen, some ever, some they had only heard stories of. Within that, I was able to work with them and not just document words, but also document the importance and background of those items and their relevance to both genders, relevance to societies, relevance to ceremonial traditions, and all along the way was more words and more phrases. Some of our elders that visited different centers in the development of how do we put together this center's exhibit, they came upon their grandfather's drum and they played it at that center. This is only one way that we integrate language revitalization and acquisition into other careers. The group that Hannah O'Regan works with and Timothy Caratu is they are the leading language knowledge keepers in their community, but their jobs and careers are in every single field. They're artists, they're broadcasters, they're writers, they're translators. They've also worked with Lord. They've created a new album. All of that is contributing to more materials that is with the language. The importance of cultivating relationships amongst each other with language activists is inspiration. If we look at our life stages as Indigenous people, every phase of our life is a new birth. That new birth is energizing, it's empowering. If we are not going through our coming of age rites, we're missing that part of us. If we are not going through our parenting rites, giving birth, we're missing a part of that. If we're not going through being a relative of a parent, we're missing those rites and those teachings. An elder is only an elder because they've achieved a certain level of knowledge, respect, and wealth of cultural teachings. Kim Anderson talks about there's an agreement, sometimes an unspoken agreement, between mentors and the ones they are teaching. An intergenerational knowledge exchange comes with responsibilities. Once we are gifted with that knowledge, we are required to share it. And part of the work that's going on in communities that are also revitalizing their languages is teaching the ways specifically to each culture that they share that they take care of that responsibility. So while language revitalization and acquisition can be spliced up into many different forms of methods of curriculum, project planning and development, grant work, different grades that you teach to? Do you teach writing first? Do you teach spoken first? Do you have the resources to teach either? We can't sustain the relationships that we are building through that time invested if we are not cognizant of how we are taking care of each other. Within language revitalization, there needs to be an awareness of those life stages that are specific to each culture. Not every culture has coming of age rites. Not every culture has specific ways that they take care of milestones in your life. But every culture before contact had ways to sustain their own people long into ages where they're teaching and passing on that knowledge. With language work, we have an opportunity to also document that alongside preserving the languages. With the language activists that I've worked with, some of the things that they said that was most important was being prepared. Is not just being prepared for the lesson at hand, but being prepared for what you can expect to go through. So I'd like to share some of those teachings that have been given to me. Is the most important relationship is between that mentor and the student. Cultivate that, take care of that, love each other. That will get you on through whatever steps in your life. And when they pass away, that knowledge will still be alive within you. Develop and make ways that you also develop that supportive relationship amongst your peers. After our elders have passed on, it's our peers who we will have to talk to. If we are not investing in those relationships side by side, once our fluent speaker passes on to the happy hunting grounds, the next village across the river, we'll be alone and we'll experience what they experienced by being one of the last fluent speakers. Don't set yourself up for that experience. Help each other. Another thing is looking at what you can do beyond the classroom, how you infuse that. A lot of the work that I do, I'm unsure with the language work that I do. I don't pronounce it right. I don't speak it right. I think that will be, have to say thank you for the rest of my life. Mazgarat, because I don't think I'll ever be to the point where I speak the same way my ancestors spoke, and that's okay. That's all right. Language changes. But I need to feel empowered with the work that I do. And one of the ways I do that is I gravitate towards what empowers me. So I have a lived experience to work towards. Artwork is one of those. Beading, painting, drawing, singing. That empowers me. I feel that strength. Whatever activity empowers you, whether it's sports, and I can't dribble and shoot for my life. I'm not that native. Whatever empowers you, hold on to that and bring that feeling to your language work. So you have that to work towards. So those are the words and the gifts, a little bit of the work that I'm doing to share with you. I look forward to the coming work that I have here with the Peabody collections, with the Yale Art Gallery collections, to bring that knowledge that I have to interact and greet our ancestral items, and then reach out to the communities and see how we can replicate those actions, that we integrate provenance research with cultural knowledge keepers, language knowledge keepers, and how we can maintain those items, repatriate the ones that can be, and make sure they're being taken care of properly for the time being, until our people at that knowledge of how we take care of those items and feed them and tend to them.
But we can't take care of that if we can't take care of ourselves. So that's my prayer I'm leaving you with, is learn to love yourself, especially in this time of COVID. Take that break. Take care of each other so that you'll know that goodness and you'll put that into your work. So I'd like to introduce Isabella as a wonderful student here in the Department of History of Art. She's going to assist in handling any questions that the room may have, and then that is also online, and I'll try to get through them as quick as possible.
All right, yeah, hey everyone. She Isabella Robbins, Unisha, Bilagana Nishla, Hashkana Dilla, Bashishin, Ado, Bilagana Dashiche, Nakaidina and Dashanella, Nana Ahasana Dan Nasha, Ego Dina Asana Nishla. Hi everyone, my name is Isabella. In the spirit of things, I just wanted to introduce myself as well in the Nebazad or Navajo language. I'm excited to be with you all here today and to help field some questions, just as a reminder. And I do encourage you to ask a question if you're in the room at either side of the seats. Please keep your masks on if you're going to ask a question. And yeah, I'd really like to open it up to everyone. But maybe just to get us started, Royce, and I just again want to say thank you. I think that was beautiful. I see a lot of my own stories, my family's stories, especially my father, and what you've reflected. And I guess thinking about that, I'm curious if you could speak a little bit more about like how motherhood and how parenthood has impacted your language work, but also your work in museums, and in anthropology and as an artist.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I have two boys, Bertebet, Tomo, Winterhawk is my oldest. My youngest is Ochmo. And my rebirth happened with their birth. A lot of the work that I do is knowing firsthand how much care goes into raising another human being, how much investment that takes and prioritization that also takes. What are we going to prioritize for our teachings and ourselves? So what I carry from motherhood into the work that I do is boundaries. A lot of what I do is how to navigate the task load, how to make sure that I am getting where I need to and being fully aware of what I can't achieve within a certain timeline. Parenting will let you know right away what you can and can't achieve. And then also just, you know, being a parent to two boys and being a mother, knowing how important that is, that they're receiving that knowledge from specific knowledge keepers in their gender. So making sure that I build relationships to provide information that is specific to their gender or their needs. And that's a lot of the work that I do with language work, also collections work, is material items, those cultural items, whether they were gifted and created in an exchange to an institution, or if they were taken through salvage ethnographers and the practice of grave robbing. Those items are ancestors. So how do we take care of those? If I'm not equipped to take care of them myself, who do I know and have the relationships with that I can reach out to help those items?
Great, thank you. We have a couple of questions in the chat that I think would be great to have you speak a little bit about. Somebody is curious about how pervasive, powerful, and robust English is. And they ask, how do languages with very few native speakers resist the force of the English language and perhaps become also more robust?
So how pervasive English is. Well, I'm giving my talk in English, and the majority of my conversations with my elders, they always switch back to English because I'm still at a level of beginning language knowledge. I can read it and pretty much translate everything that I read and hear, but speaking conversation-wise, I'm not to that point, and it's embarrassing. It is. And excuse me, I'm multi-tribal, so English is one language. It's a universal language. It is so easy to use that, and it's also a benefit that we can use that to communicate with. Being multi-tribal, I have 5 different languages that I could commit my time to being. I've chosen to commit a lot of my time to Sosiri, to Shoshone, and to Hadza. They're completely different languages. They're very close, though, to another ancestral tribe. I'm Crow from my Hadza side. And that language, though, is still a little bit different than Hadza. But some of the words are shared amongst them. One of them is Mia. Mia in Hadza is woman. Bia in Hadza, well, in Crow and Shoshone is woman, but Bia is a bad word for fart in Hadza. And so I switch them quite a bit, and thank God for, like, thankfully I have English to apologize in. So pervasive, English is very pervasive, and it's hard to keep them separate. It's also hard to make sure that I'm not confusing my own languages that I'm learning simultaneously with English.
Great. I have a similar story of accidentally saying
Yeah.
like an inappropriate body part instead of like bag or something.
Yes,
And that was-
and that's everywhere, and it happens.
Yeah. This question's actually from a professor in the department, Professor Behringer. And he's wondering if you could speak a little bit more about objects and visual language and the ways in which these traditions may parallel the work you have done in the field of spoken language. Can you speak to how your approach might be extended to revitalization of material and visual practices?
Yeah, so a little bit of that is when you're working with language, you need a spot to hold that knowledge. You need to craft a way that you weave that knowledge into your being. With visual work, like some of the images you've seen up here, is that makes it easier. I'm able to go directly to the source. Within some of the images, and you can't see them on Zoom, they are listed online though, but the Earth Lodge, specifically gathering those photos at the winter season where our constellations were at a specific angle, allowed us to tell stories from an image because our creation stories are told at certain times of the year. In the material cultural items, there's a lot of motifs that are beaded, quill worked, and also etched into stones that also tell those stories. Unfortunately, you have to be told those stories and given the right to share them in their entirety, and it has to be at a specific time of the year. But getting creative, you can utilize artwork and visual tellings as well as songs to evoke that memory from those ancestral items. So even though we can't share them in a community setting, we remember them. And those motifs, those stories are signified by the visual representation of them. We just need to make sure that's documented and it's being told alongside those items, especially while artists are still alive. So asking those questions of what are the symbols? What do they mean? Will they share that with us? And then how do we need to take care of them is very important to the work we're doing.
That's great. We're almost just about at time, but I'm wondering if you could actually just speak a little bit more specifically about the textile that you can see here, and then also the images that those of us in the building can actually see if you're comfortable.
Yeah, well, were there any questions real quick? Because the Zoom will have to cut off here soon. And then I can keep talking about this with who's in the room, if you don't mind. Is there a question from the room that anyone had? Yes.
Thank you so much for your talk. Oh, is there another question? Thank you. Thank you so much for your talk. It was so beautiful from beginning to end. I'm a second language learner as an immigrant. And, you know, so my questions are about that position. First is how do you become okay with being wrong or getting it wrong? How do you get over that fear? And my second question is, how do you become a gift giver in this position where you're receiving so much? You talked about sort of food. But I was wondering if you could talk more about that relationship. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So that's what many people, some aren't taught at the beginning of language learning. You know, it depends on your teacher, whether they're very staunch and they want you to get it right, pronounce it specifically how you want, but that's a life stage. As children, we pronounce words wrong for many years. I think I still pronounce some words wrong now, but you have to be okay with that. So you have to have that open, safe space in that learning environment and amongst your peers, that you all know it's okay. So communicate that we're learning, it's all right, it's fine, and then truly feel that within you. The other thing of your next question of
Being a giver as a
yeah, so gift giving is really, really important. It is one of the basic elements of maintaining a relationship. But gift giving is specific to each culture. In some of my tribes, I will give tobacco. That signifies we are in agreement. We are making an agreement and we will take care of each other along this. What you share with me, I will take care of my time. I will take care of you. Other ways is you don't give tobacco. People don't want that type of strong tie. But you can be taught specifically, I'm going to bring food, never come empty-handed. Even sharing a story is a gift giving. Tonight, I shared a song, I shared stories and words that I hope continue to inspire you. The biggest thing is kindness. Every single language activist I've talked with, every single elder I've talked with, kindness is a gift. Being kind to each other is taking care of that responsibility. So if in your specific culture, seek out the ones who are kind. Seek out the ones who lead by action. Those are the ones that you're going to get honesty from. And it doesn't cost a penny to be kind.
Well, with that, I think we'll close this out. I hope you'll all join me virtually and in person in giving Royce a round of applause. And I hope you know how